Hey everyone, just wanted to give you an update on my YZ250X here. I've had the bike for a year now and I've put 52 hours on it. Just wanted to let you know the things I've done to the bike and what type of riding I use the bike for. When I first bought the bike, the first thing I did is I took the stock hand grips off of it. The stock hand grips were pretty firm, and they dug into my hands, pretty bad. So I got rid of those and I put, a softer grip on it, and that works out pretty good for me. Another thing I did to the bike is, let me first tell you the type of riding I do with this bike. It's tight woods riding, so it tends to be a lot of roots where I ride. It's really not a lot of rocks, but it's mainly roots. So what I did is I put extreme duty tubes in the tires, front and rear. And that just helps me from getting pinch flats from riding through the roots when I'm going, fast through the roots. So most of the time I'm not going that fast because it's so tight and so many trees that you can't really you can get your speed up. But anyhow, I haven't had any pinch flats at all since I put the tubes in. Now, when I had regular tubes in it, the stock tubes, I did get pinch flats, and I get little leaks from time to time, and that's from getting pinches on it from. I'm pretty sure from hitting the roots at high speed. So anyhow, I did that, and I put a little pipe guard on it, one of those cheap pipe guards that's just made out of aluminum. You mold around to the pipe. The pipe's been pretty tough. I've tipped the bike over many times, and it seems like the stock pipe is made out of some really good thick material. I haven't had any dings or dents in it. I just put the guard on it just to keep stuff from smacking it when I kick stuff up with the front tire. So that's worked out really good for me. I put this bigger tank on it thinking I would need it. I kind of jumped the gun when I got it, but after I got it for the riding that we do, it's like maybe 2.5 hours long, and I'm using maybe half the tank, sometimes a little bit more than half, and we end up going to the truck at least once during that ride. So really constant riding, before getting back to the truck, about an hour and 15 minutes. So the stock tank would have been more than enough. And I do enjoy having the bigger tank on it because it gives me something more to grip onto. And if I were to do a race or two with it, like a hare scrambles race, some of those can be an hour and a half to 2 hours long, and it's usually more open in those, so you're going to be burning a whole lot more fuel. So I'm glad I got it for that. That way I know I got plenty of fuel and I won't have to make a fuel stop during the race. If I were to decide to do a race or two here and there. Another thing I did with the bike is when I first started riding the bike in the tight woods and going up the really steep hills, the hills tend to have a lot of trees in them, so you're not just going straight up a hill, you're going up a hill and you're dodging trees. So sometimes you have to actually go up the hill at a pretty slow pace, and you can't keep up your momentum to get around the trees while you're going up the hill. So I noticed I was having to use the clutch a lot to kind of keep it in the power band, and to keep it from dying. So what I did is I, simple fix, I just put a 1/2 smaller front sprocket on it, and that made a world of difference. It gave me a lot more, tractor-like feeling going up the hills. And I thought I could do a little bit better than that even, so I went ahead and I got a flywheel weight and put it on it. It's the GYTR flywheel weight that you get from Yamaha. They make it for the YZ250 and this YZ250X. Basically they're the same bikes with just a few little tweaks between them. And that made a huge difference. Now it tractors up the hills. I hate to say it because people don't like to hear that people making their 2-strokes run like a 4-stroke, but it gave me that grunt that I needed to get up those steep hills and get around those trees without worrying about the bike stalling on me. It gave me a lot more tractability and a lot more control. Also what I did is I cut some of the seat foam out. I lowered my seat about 1.5 inches in areas, and while I was cutting it and shaving it down, I checked the foam to make sure I had plenty of foam on it, between the foam and the base of the seat. I didn't want to be going through the foam to the base of the seat if I was sitting and going through some rough terrain. So that's helped me out a whole lot as far as when it comes time to having to put my feet down and steady myself, whether going up a steep hill, going along the side of the hill. It's kept me from getting, into some bad situations. So just that little bit helped me out quite a bit. As far as issues with the bike, I mean, the fork seals, the fork seals have not started leaking. I know people that have got bikes and, you know, they put less than 10 hours on it, the fork seals are leaking. I tell you what I do is each time I do wash the bike, I don't ever use a pressure washer on the bike. I use a hose and just soap and water and brushes and sponges and towels. This is what I use to clean it. I get those little baby bottle cleaners. It comes in several different sizes also, and that helps me get into the little nooks and crannies and clean the bike a little bit better. You know, I just didn't want to use the pressure washer because I found in the past on bikes of mine that using the pressure washer got into my bearings and ate my bearings up. But like I started telling you earlier, the issue I had, and the only issue I've had, is at about 50 hours, the front wheel bearings were getting slack in them. And what I did is I took it apart and looked at the bearings and noticed that there was some moisture in there and the bearings were starting to rust, and that was wearing out my bearings. And I also noticed that it didn't seem to me like there was much lube on those bearings from the factory to begin with. It was just a little. So I've ordered some new bearings because they started getting just a little bit of slack in them. It's not to the point to where I can't ride the bike, but I know it's only going to get worse with time, you know, as I ride it. So I'm going ahead and I got some sealed bearings. The bearings that are in it, at least the bearings that are in my bike, and I bought this bike new, they're not sealed bearings, they're open bearings, so you know anything that gets in there, it gets right into the bearing and will eat it up. So, and that's what happened to mine. So I got some sealed bearings for them. I'll put those in when they come in, and hopefully I won't have to worry about it for a little bit longer than you know, the 50 hours that these lasted. The steering stem bearings, you may want to check those too if you got one of these. It seemed to me like the steering stem bearings didn't have much lube on them either, so I went ahead and you know, I packed those bearings really good with a good you know, quality waterproof grease, and you know, it seems like it's working a lot better because it seemed like the bearings just weren't running as smooth as they should have, and the reason why is it didn't have much lube in it, and the lube wasn't doing much for the bearings anymore. So I caught it in time before, you know, I did any damage to the bearings themselves. The bearings seemed okay. But anyway, that's something you may want to check. You know, people have always told me, you know, when you get a new bike, you better check the bearings because, you know, they get a little stingy with the grease from the factory on the bearings, and they were right. So I checked the linkage bearings to the rear shock, and that was all lubed good. It was fine. It was just the steering stem and the front one that just didn't have much lube on it, but everything else seemed like it was lubed up pretty good. So, but I still took it apart, cleaned it and all, and re-lubed it since I had it apart. As far as the suspension on the bike, the suspension on this bike is excellent. I've owned several bikes, raced several bikes through the years, and you know, the suspension, the stock suspension was like, hey, you got the job done, but you know, you just felt like you needed to do like everybody else, send your suspension off and get it revalved, you know, to work correctly. This suspension, I haven't felt that need to do it. It works really good out of the box. Now I have, you know, messed with the clickers and, you know, the compression and rebound, and really experimented with it. And I went from one extreme to the other, all the way soft, all the way hard on everything, just so I could see how it feels, because, you know, I'm not no test rider. I don't know everything there is to know about, you know, how suspension should work. All I can go is by how it feels to me. So that's what I did. I'm running my sag at 110 millimeters, my rear shock sag, and that's just another thing I played around with and found that works best for me. It helps my rear end squat down and dig in and get up those hills, you know, when I need to. It seems like I got more traction that way. I know, you know, everybody, you know, follows the rule book, you know, around 100 millimeters, you know, is what you're supposed to do, and, you know, like I said, it just works for me. I'm on 110, and it seems like it's really plush. The bike is really plush over logs and stuff. I mean, I'm able to go over logs, you know, like that, and stay seated on the seat and not really get a bad jarring from it, where, you know, bikes in the past that I've had, you probably didn't want to be sitting down on the seat when you went over a log because it's going to hurt you pretty good. So, anyhow, I put a little plastic skid plate on the bike, you know, just to help it when I am going over the bigger logs, just to help it to slide over them so that my frame's not just rubbing against it, and that seems to be doing a good job. And it's not a real expensive skid plate. I just got one of the, you know, it's about a $70-something skid plate. I know they run, you know, most skid plates run 100 or better. But anyhow, it does the job for me. But anyhow, you know, I bought this bike with intentions of You know, I didn't want to sink a lot of money into the motor and suspension, so I wanted to ride it for a while and see how I could make it work, and I made it work really good. I mean, I feel that I can go out and do a race on this tomorrow and be perfectly fine. The suspension is that good out of the box. You know, and now it tractors like a 300. I had a KTM 300XC, and it would just tractor up hills. It just wouldn't stop, and that's how this 250X now is. It's like that. It's just got all kinds of grunt. You don't have to use the clutch as much at all. I used to run auto clutch in all my bikes, but I haven't found a use for the auto clutch in this one because the clutch pole is so smooth. And this is a cable clutch, but Yamaha's got it so smooth now on their bikes that I've had people come up and pull the clutch in on mine and go, wow, it's just so smooth and easy. It almost feels easier than my hydraulic clutch on my dirt bike. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, you know, Yamaha's really got it down, it seems like. But anyhow, it runs really good as long as you keep it clean, keep the cable lubed, you know, it'll keep working that way. You know, so I plan to keep the bike stock and just keep it up and change the transmission oil when it needs to be changed and make sure I got, you know, good quality gas in it, you know, and mixed the way it's supposed to be. And I just plan on riding the bike and having fun. That's what I'm out there to do, is just have fun on the bike. And, you know, I just don't want to dump a whole lot of money in the dirt bikes anymore. I've already been that route, and I just don't really want to do that at this point. I'm not racing all the time, and I don't feel the need to. But even if I was racing with this bike, I think it would be just fine. But anyhow, I just wanted to give you guys some information out there, you know, in case you have one of these bikes and, you know, you don't have the money to, you know, put a lot of money into it. Here's just some simple things you can do to the bike that'll make it work a lot better for you if you're riding in the woods. Now, if you're riding out in the desert, this isn't going to work for you as far as the way I got this gearing, because you're going to need different gearing for the desert. This is mainly for tight woods, you know, riding, trail riding stuff, you know, because you're going to lose your top end speed on this, because it's going to lower the gearing so much. So anyhow, I hope y'all enjoyed this video and you got some good information out of it. And my next video I'm going to put out is I'm going to do a little walk around of the bikes and just get a better look at the motorcycle, and then maybe do a video of some of the steep hills that I climb with this bike and how well it's working the way I have it set up. And you'll see how I don't have to use the clutch hardly at all. I can just put it in third gear and gas it and go, and it does just fine. And you'll be able to see how low I can take the motor without it stalling. So anyhow, hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to putting out the next video for you.